Kashkembri is a Maltese humanitarian worker who's based in East Africa. For the last years, he's been working with humanitarian organizations in the region. He's also worked and lived in the Middle East, specifically in Gaza, right after he left this job over here at MaltaToday, where he was my editor as well as a colleague. Today I'm going to be speaking to him about his life in Gaza and asking him about what it means to be a Gazan today and living inside the place which is dubbed the world's largest open-air prison. Carl, tell me briefly about how you ended up leaving your journalism job in Malta and working in Gaza.
In 2009, when I was working with MaltaToday as the deputy editor, I got a chance to join a Palestinian news agency called Ramatan, which had offices in Ramallah when I worked for a few months, but their head office was actually in the Gaza Strip. So I jumped on the chance because that was what I had been waiting for, and it was the reason I studied Arabic, and joined them, and went first in the West Bank, Ramallah, covering the stories from there, and then a long odyssey to get into Gaza because, of course, the Israeli government wouldn't recognize me as a journalist, having been employed by a Palestinian news agency. It has had no recognition by the occupying party. So I couldn't get an Israeli press card, which would have allowed me to enter Gaza very easily. And instead, I had to enter via Egypt. And it's a very difficult journey, long. You have to cross the Sinai Desert. You have to get a driver to take you and get through the Egypt-Gaza border, which required a lot of permits and letters and all sorts of acrobatics to get in. I finally managed. I went in with a group of mostly American activists who were campaigning for the lifting of the siege back then already. It had already been in place for over 2 years, and I went in. I managed to get in, and then I stayed. I couldn't get in and out as I wanted because it was very bureaucratic, and so I stayed for months on end there, and I ended up spending 4 years of my life in the Gaza Strip.
Let's talk about free movement. You could not move freely in and out of Gaza, as I understand. How about the people of Gaza themselves? Do they need to move in and out of Gaza into Israel, for example?
My movements were restricted, but I was the privileged chap with a European passport who ultimately could go in and out and had a country to go back to. For the Palestinians, now there are 2.4 million Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip in an area which is smaller than the surface area of Malta. The densely populated, living close to each other, on top of each other, their movement is completely sealed off. It's cut off. That's what we mean when we say Gaza is besieged. It's also done. The siege of Gaza is also carried out with the complicity of the Egyptian government, which also seals the south of the Gaza Strip. But ultimately, Israel, as the occupying power, is the one responsible that declared the siege and annexed it by land, by sea, and by air. Palestinians are constantly surveilled, monitored, regulated in all aspects of their life, both in the West Bank and maybe more dramatically in the Gaza Strip, where they can't leave, movement is totally restricted by Israel, and that means movement of people, movement of goods, what goes in, what comes out of Gaza is entirely regulated by Israel. That meant one small story, a young lady had breast cancer and she couldn't do a half-an-hour journey to the West Bank from Gaza by car if they would have allowed her to go and get treatment for her breast cancer. She wasn't allowed, so she had to then get specialized treatment in Jordan by traveling to Egypt in a very expensive trip and required many follow-ups. So that's just one case. Students who get scholarships in the US and the UK are not allowed, many of them are banned from traveling. So that's their future thrown down the drain with a simple decision. Everything is regulated by Israel. So the most accurate description, which is always said about Gaza, and I already felt it 10 years ago when I was there, is that it is an open air prison. It's the biggest open air prison in the world. And I think that's very accurate. Only that the Palestinians trapped there are civilians who have committed no crime. They're just besieged. And now we're hearing about the decision to further besiege Gaza totally, which amounts to war crimes. That's a war crime to starve people, to cut them off supplies, and it will be catastrophic.
We have a nation of people who are born as well into this open air prison, and we have people who deal with this daily reality, which also involves, apart from the hardship of living in Gaza, it also involves enduring the attacks, and also one would imagine life under Hamas. Is it fair to speak of not just one Gaza or one Palestine, apart from the Palestinian who lives under the reality of the illegal occupation? There is also the reality of dealing with the Israeli reprisals, and also life under the rule of Hamas, which is the militia that perpetrated this attack on Israeli soil.
Life in Gaza is terrible, especially for children born there who know no other alternative. They are raised in a constant situation of violence and all sorts of trauma. Of children who wake up after the latest escalation and find half of their class has been wiped out by an Israeli missile strike the night before, and then they are growing in a more and more conservative society, which is closed off to the rest of the world. That's the natural outcome of when you close off an entire population. So the levels of injustice and cruelty and barbarity that these people have to endure, the trauma which never ends. It's there's always an escalation around the corner, and it's all about the root causes of all this, which are left untackled by the powers that be. Maybe a word about the European Union, which has been the most generous donor to Palestinians. Now all of a sudden saying it might review and stop aid to Palestinians, when everyone knows that not 1 cent of our euros has gone to Hamas. So this is just posturing, cruel posturing, because if you cut aid now when the Palestinians need it most, when we also know that all of that aid by European taxpayers has been over and over destroyed by nobody but Israel. So we've seen in the West Bank schools built with European taxpayers' money for Palestinian Bedouin children, essential service, keeping them in classes, they get destroyed. Water wells for farmers in the West Bank that are built with European taxpayers' money, they get destroyed by Israel because it doesn't allow any sort of development on Palestinian land. So this is, I think, part of the root cause, the double standards of how the world has been dealing with this open wound for decades.
Yes, in fact, you mentioned the EU, and naturally the EU was quick to condemn this as a terrorist attack. But if we go as recently as 2021, in fact, as you mentioned, there was already a large portion of EU funding, around 215 million, that goes to critical healthcare, that was delayed over EU demands on specific changes to Palestinian school textbooks. Do you feel that that the world has been forgetting about Palestine entirely in the last years?
We see an effort to almost eradicate even the mention of Palestinians and the efforts for normalization that have been going on, while it's as if the Palestinians are not even part of the equation anymore. I think one of the biggest problems that we're facing is a double standard of the Palestinians' right, inalienable right to freedom and self-determination, as opposed to other theaters around the world where indigenous people are facing the same existential problem, and they get all sorts of different treatment, rightly so, and all the support that they need. So this could be really solved very quickly if the powers that be, the countries with most influence, to tackle it for what it is, and tackle these deep-rooted problems that have been festering for so long. But it can be solved very quickly if they wanted to.
Carl, my final question: is an independent state of Palestine even possible under these conditions when we see this violence erupting?
At the end of the day, that's for the Palestinians themselves to determine what their future has to be. I think at the core here is the fight for freedom, dignity, and some form of self-determination. It's the details will be worked out, but it's what the Palestinians have been calling for. So that has to definitely be part of the solution.
Taj Kembri, thank you very much for this interview.